Hey guys, I hope that at this point in time, you've had a chance to work through the first and second thing that I asked you guys to do on Moodle. Miss you guys terribly. Wish I could be there in person to kind of go through this talk with you guys, but you got me on screen, so that's good. So here's the deal. If you have not read the end of the book, do not watch this video because I'm totally about to spoil it all for you. So read the book first, and then you can watch the video. So just to give you kind of some clarification about what was on Moodle today. So one of the very first things that I asked you to do was I asked you to handwrite answers to those questions that I gave you. And those questions are just intended to give you a kind of review. They were just a little sample of the similar type of close read questions that I gave you before. But the intention is that they are going to help you to close read what you were assigned to read the day before, school got canceled and we were all on break. So please make sure that you do those, you answer those, you write it on paper, you take a picture of it, and you submit it on Moodle. So that's your job. And then after that, you're going to read the rest of the book. So you only have, like 6 pages. I think it's page 114 to page 120. So it's not a lot of pages. So you want to read that before you continue to watch the video. Now, here is the deal. I am about to spoil the book for you. So just bear with me. Okay, so on page 114, first of all, we really kind of get this idea. So throughout the chapter, we're having this idea where Irene is starting to question, is Brian really cheating on her with Claire? So when she had this first idea, she was convinced. She was like, oh my gosh, that's what's wrong with Brian. He's cheating on me with Claire. And then she kind of backtracks, right? Which is what you were supposed to read for homework. So she backtracks and she's like, maybe he's not cheating. He's never given me a reason to cheat. He's never given me any signs that he's been cheating before. And so she kind of backtracks and convinces herself he's not cheating. Now, we never get a clear answer from Nella Larson whether or not Brian and Claire are having an affair. So we just never know. It's kind of left up to the reader to interpret. It's one of those ambiguous ideas that she throws out there and we never really get an answer to. So, but on page 114, something interesting happens where Irene has convinced herself Brian's not cheating. He's faithful. It's just all in her head. And then on page 114, she has a moment where she thinks this is a convincing moment. So a little more than halfway down the page, it says, in a quick furtive glance, she saw Claire clinging to Brian's other arm. She was looking at him with a provocative upward glance of hers, and his eyes were fastened on her face with what seemed to Irene an expression of wistful eagerness. And it's from this point that she is now convinced that for sure Claire and Brian are having an affair. Now, I'm mentioning that because it becomes very important with what happens next in the story. So if you read the book, you know that they're all going to a party at the Freeland's house and they're all going together. So they proceed to go up to the party. Everyone's having a great time except for Irene. Because of course now Irene is feeling like, I've seen the way he looked at her. I've seen her grabbing his arm. Of course they're having an affair, and she is back kind of in her internal conflict of, what am I going to do with my life? My security is being threatened. She goes on to say kind of further down the page that she realizes she never even really loved Brian, her husband, but she just loved the sense of security that he brought, and she didn't want to lose that. And so throughout the rest of this chapter, she's kind of arguing with herself and dealing with this idea of, I wish Claire was gone. I wish Claire was out of the picture. And she's tired of Claire. And so on page 116, we know that Irene had opened a window to get some air, and it's a long encased window. And we know that at this point, Claire's husband shows up at the party. And so as Claire's husband shows up at the party, chaos begins to ensue. So here's what happens on page 116. The text says, what happened next, Irene Redfield never afterwards allowed herself to remember. Never clearly. One moment, Claire had been there, a vital, glowing thing, like a flame of red and gold. And the next, she was gone. And so it's important to note that Irene says she never allowed herself to remember what happened, because not only do I think it's traumatic for her what happened with Claire dying and falling out the window, but there's some sense of we don't know how Claire died and how she ended up falling out the window or getting pushed, for that matter. And so on page 117, after Claire falls out the window, here is what Irene says. Irene wasn't sorry. Or sorry, this is what the text says. Irene wasn't sorry. She was amazed, incredulous almost. And so as soon as Claire falls out the window or is pushed, we don't know, everybody rushes downstairs to kind of check on Claire and see if she's still alive. And Irene is the only one who stays upstairs. And as she's upstairs, she's having this internal conflict. Should I run downstairs? Now it's too late if I run downstairs. Everyone's going to wonder why I didn't run downstairs. And she's having this internal battle. And she keeps telling herself it's a terrible accident. It's a terrible accident, and whatnot. But on page 118, we still don't know how Claire has died. On page 118, halfway down the page, Irene begins to descend down the stairs because she's thinking, I have to bring Brian his coat. It's snowing outside. It's cold. She runs downstairs and she has the thought, what if Claire's not dead? And it frightens her. And so again, we have another clue that, hey, maybe Claire falling out the window is not just Claire falling out the window. Maybe somebody pushed her, and maybe that somebody was Irene. Maybe or maybe not. The text never tells us. Now, on page 119, everybody's downstairs. The police come to investigate, and we have differing stories happening here. So on page 119, Ralph Hazelton, who we know because remember he danced with Claire a couple parties ago, but he tells the officer about halfway down the page, I was looking right at her. She just tumbled over and was gone before you could say Jack Robinson. Fainted, I guess. Lord, it was quick. Quickest thing I ever saw in all my life. So Ralph Hazelton, who was a witness there to see what happened, he claims that Claire fainted when her husband showed up at the party and she fell out the window. And so his observation is that she was not pushed, but actually she fell. And, maybe she fainted, maybe she fell, or maybe she just committed suicide because her husband showed up and she realized her whole way of life was about to be rocked. Either way, Ralph Hazelton's thing, she fell out the window. Okay. Now, underneath that, Brian tells us something different. And so Brian's take on the whole deal on page 119, here we go, about halfway down the page. It says, a strange man, official and authoritative, addressed her. You're sure she fell? Her husband didn't give her a shove or anything like that, as Dr. Redfield seems to think. So this text implies then that Dr. Redfield, who is Brian, believes that her husband, Mr. Below, actually came and pushed Claire out the window, right? Out of his rage and anger of finding out that she was Black and that he had been deceived all this time. And so Brian's idea is that her husband pushed her out the window and she died. So we already have two differing ideas of what happened to Claire. Ralph Hazelton thinks she fell. Brian thinks she was pushed. Now, we never get Irene's side of the story, and then the book ends. And so we're kind of left with this ambiguous ending. What happened to Claire? Who killed Claire? And the kind of lingering question that's all around is, did Irene push Claire out the window? And so I want you to decide where you stand on the issue. Do you think Irene fell? Do you think she committed suicide? Do you think that her husband pushed her out of his rage? Or do you think it was Irene, who's supposed to be her friend? But remember, her thought process in this is that Irene wants Claire out of the picture, right? But Irene is also a very sweet woman who's not like Claire. So you guys kind of have to come up with this idea of who killed Claire. So your assignment for today is to take a stance on who killed Claire. And I want you to come up with two pieces of evidence from the text that proves your standpoint. So for example, if I were to say that Mr. Below is the one who killed Claire, that in his rage, in being so upset about finding out that she was Black and he had been deceived, that he actually, killed her, rushed to the window and pushed her out, I would need to come up with two pieces of textual evidence to support that idea. Now, if I want to say and fall with Ralph Hazelton's idea that maybe she fainted and fell out the window, well, I would need two pieces of evidence to prove that as well. If I'm going to go with the idea that Irene did it, and she's the murderer here in this case, and she killed Claire, again, I'm going to need two pieces of evidence. So if I'm going whatever route you're trying to go in determining who is responsible for Claire's death, you want to find 2 pieces of evidence. So you're going to write me a paragraph in which you explain who you think killed Claire and who was responsible for her death. And you're going to come up with 2 pieces of evidence from the text. I don't want the internet answers. I want to know your answers and what you're thinking. Be sure to include in text citations. You've known how to do this, so hopefully you can do it correctly. And submit that through Turnitin. So you're going to turn in this particular paragraph through Turnitin. Alrighty. Okay, and then we can always discuss this on Zoom because I know some of you are going to have lots of thoughts about who you think killed Claire. And so I look forward to hearing about those thoughts from you all on Zoom. Last thing before I let you go, if you have not ordered Between the World and Me, I need you to get that book ASAP. I just found out today that Amazon is going to be limiting their supply of things that they are shipping out only to essentials. So whatever they have in the warehouse is all that's getting shipped at this point. So please get online, buy that book Between the World and Me, because we are starting it very soon in the next couple class periods. All right. Love you guys. Have a great day. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.